Hello and welcome to this week's crypto update. So what's been happening in the market and what does this mean for crypto? So to start this, I think it simply comes down to both a statement and a question. Uncertainty rules. As a statement, uncertainty is very much still in the marketplace. We can see that we're still talking tariffs on, tariffs off, size of tariffs, where will they end up? This is, of course, creating huge uncertainty out into the marketplace. But, of course, then we also have the overall US deficit. It is very much starting to take center stage. Of course, we've seen over the last number of months, Elon Musk being taken into the overall administration and giving the lead when it came to Doge, or the group that were asked to reduce the deficit. Most people, I believe, in America and even both sides of the aisle, both blue and red, have an understanding that the deficits are too large and, as it continues, will cause problems to the US economy over time. However, many probably don't want to go through the pain of that being put in place. Elon Musk was put in charge of trying to reduce this deficit by $2 trillion. It looked like they were making great movements towards that, though while facing much resistance, that they were moving towards that pretty quickly. And we could see huge amounts of government waste along the way. It appears that so far they have achieved less than 200 billion of that. And when I say achieved, I don't think hardly any of this has been pushed through. It's just they've found it and now they're trying to see, can they actually cut it out? All the while, we see Elon Musk has now pulled back from this situation, as it looks like this is far more difficult to achieve than many might have thought. Again, while many believe the idea of reducing spending is good, no one wants to go through the pain of actually doing this. And of course, we've just seen in the last few days a huge spat now having started between Elon Musk and Trump. Who could have imagined that two massive egos would have a clash? So now we have a situation that creates even more uncertainty. Most people in the US and elsewhere believe that the US need to get its spending under control. However, on the other side of that, now we have Trump coming out with his big, beautiful bill that appears to going to add another $5 trillion to the debt. So now there's huge uncertainty right around the world about the US debt. We've seen its rating being reduced by Moody's recently, already been reduced by others before that. And so now this creates that massive uncertainty. I think we continue to see significant volatility. We've seen, the markets move very quickly up and down. We can see the stock market in general has moved sideways, while other stock markets around the world have increased significantly. And now we have this complete fallout between Musk and Trump over the deficit spending. So huge uncertainty there. All the while, what's happening with cryptocurrency? So we can see, for example, stablecoins. Stablecoin supply is at an all-time high. Why is that important? Well, most on-chain activities are going to require stablecoin at some point. So if stablecoin supply is growing, crypto is growing. And over the last 365 days, in other words, the year to date, full 12 months from back from here, the overall stablecoin supply has increased by 80 billion, recently hitting an all-time high of 240 billion. So that was from this time last year, it's a 50% growth in the amount of stablecoin out there. That's huge growth. What does this mean? Well, if you look at this chart here, you can see the stablecoin growth overall. And what tends to happen is the stablecoin growth has a direct effect on the overall crypto market growth. So this growth would suggest that there's plenty more to go. In fact, you then look at global M2 money supply. It is the amount of money that's in circulation. Checkable deposits, time deposits, saving deposits, and money market funds around the world. On average, the changes in the global M2 tend to be reflected in Bitcoin and the broader crypto market 12 weeks later. Now, check where global M2 is hitting, Bitcoin will go. Hinting where Bitcoin will go. Well, here's the chart. You can see that it's been following it really closely. And if it just continue following it as it has, it suggests Bitcoin going to 135K. Will that happen? Obviously, if it continues to follow this, you would suggest so. Again, it's not going to go in straight lines, but that's what it would appear to be showing. So then, back to the both the statement and the question, which was, what are the uncertainty rules? That's the question. So a lot of this comes around Bitcoin. Is Bitcoin going to act as a hedge against what's happening with the US dollar? Again, more and more uncertainty about the strength of the dollar, the strength of the economy, and the strength of their debt. In other words, buying their treasuries and bonds. The more there's question marks over that, the more people look for an alternative. And of course, traditionally, the likes of gold and silver has been that alternative. Is Bitcoin now going to move into that? Many believe so. Others, of course, will look at Bitcoin, look at the volatility and say, well, when the stock market moves down, so does Bitcoin. So it's behaving like a risk-on asset rather than a risk-off asset. So here are the thoughts of Brian Armstrong. If the electorate doesn't hold Congress accountable to reducing the deficit and start paying down debt, Bitcoin is going to take over as a reserve currency. Of course, that would be absolutely huge for Bitcoin and probably many other cryptos. He says, I love Bitcoin, but a strong America is also super important for the world. We need to get our finances under control. So what's that talking about? That is basically saying that he believes if the US continue as they are without getting their spending under control, this could be seen as being significant and very positive to Bitcoin specifically behaving as a reserve asset. But what he's also saying is if that scenario takes place, it's going to show huge weakness in the US economy. A weak economy of what's considered the number one superpower in the world shows weakness. And when you have weakness with the top superpower, there are others out there who want to be number one. And this could create great instability around the world, which of course would be definitely significant and cause, I would imagine, markets everywhere to falter. And of course, economies potentially to get into trouble. Will this be a good situation for Bitcoin, even if it was deemed to be a potential reserve asset? That's the big question. More on this on the next video for our private members. So what's still happening out there regarding crypto? Well, of course, we've just seen that US President Donald Trump's social media firm Truth Social is to launch a spot Bitcoin ETF. So we've seen Trump and the wider family are going headlong into every area of crypto. This, you would imagine, would be generally positive about crypto. And we've seen JP Morgan, one of the banks that absolutely hated Bitcoin and came out very publicly stating that, have now said that they'll accept crypto as a collateral, specifically people who have invested in the likes of the BlackRock ETF. They can use that as collateral. And even when they're looking at someone's net worth, they will now take into account their crypto holdings. Presumably Bitcoin, maybe Ethereum. I would imagine not too many others outside on the risk curve. So there you have it. It really is a case of uncertainty rules. We can see, I believe, a lot of volatility coming into the future while we see what happens with tariffs, what happens with, are they going to do something about their deficits in the US? Will they find some way to maintain stability? Can they save their economy from going into a recession? This will all have very significant outcomes for the likes of Bitcoin and the wider risk-on assets, safe haven assets, and of course, crypto in general. So what will this specifically mean for Bitcoin? And of course, the wider crypto market? More on the private video. Talk to you there. Thank you.